The void over Cadence Ultima splits like old scar tissue, light leaking through in a ragged grin. Vox towers stutter. 1,000 steeples throw back the sudden crimson glow. Hab cylinders in the mid-spires pause their rotation as cogitators triplicate the same failing calculation. Mass incoming, vector unstable. Heat bloom at unsanctioned thresholds. Children in pilgrimage lines point through the ash snow. Inward, toward the Cyclopean government spire, a siren begins to wail. It climbs the cathedral black buttresses and the miles of stacked shanties like an animal trying to escape. On the balcony of the prefecture, the governor stands with palm pressed to a brass rail, knuckles pale. She watches the tear widen and the thing inside it fall, a small shape, fast and deliberate, trailing fire like a comet dragged on chains. "Orbital batteries?" she asks. "Acquiring," says an aide through clenched Vox grill. "But, my lady, it is entering Atmo. Defensive umbrella cannot engage a friendly trajectory. We have no friendlies inbound." "Then we name it enemy until it proves otherwise," says another voice, flat, precise, without the slur of fear. The rosette at his collar is tiny, but gravity hangs on it. The Inquisitor does not look up. His eyes are half-lidded, as if listening to a voice in the floor. Air ignites around the falling shape. Vapor curls. The low hive rings tremble. He comes down like a hammer, right into the river spine that threads Cadence Ultima from the ocean gates to the mountain shrine. Plumes of boiled water vault into the air like spears, then sheet back as rain. For a heartbeat, the light blinds the city. The second heartbeat is sound, concussive, honest. Then the smoke clears. He is standing in the crater he made, waist deep in shattered ceramite and sluiced refuse, shook clean of fire. He lifts a hand, and a weapon leaps to it, an axe the color of ancient snow, its edges smoking with a cold that cracks the air. People stare. Priests flinch. A servitor in a liturgical dredge barge lifts its dead face and quits singing. The stranger drags himself up the broken canal wall in 3 steps that dent stone. He looks the way myth looks when it cuts itself on reality. Scarred, lightning pale, tattooed with blood-red bands, eyes the color of stormlight. The chains looped around his forearms move as if alive, dangling hooked blades that drag furrows in the wet concrete. Those blades glow with a reluctant heat, as if remembering a different war in a different world, and steam rises where their iron kisses the rain. Above him, a skyward roar begins. The void tear didn't close, it widens again. The Mechanicus High Altar uploads prayer requests by the 1,000. Every orbital aspect shows an emergent mass, several, then dozens. Translation: wake, blue and poisoned. Warp signatures like a hive of knives. The stranger hears the city scream and decides without ceremony that it is worth saving. He moves. A section of the hive has sagged. One of those stacked, ancient residential blocks that looks like a cliff made of windows. The translation shock has set old welds singing. Now the whole cliff face buckles, and 30,000 lives slide toward the river like beads off a wire. The stranger hurls his axe and it becomes a comet of winter. It bites deep into a support pillar, freezing stone and stain into a ridged column. He yanks his arm, and the axe returns like a hunting bird. He leaps, buries the axe again, and the ice spreads in a sheet glitter that grafts wall to wall. A ferry barge capsizes under the wave. He dives. His chains unspool. The blades at their ends sear underwater like suns, and he snags the ferry's keel, braces and hauls. The canal bulges, his muscles tear and mend, and the ferry lurches upright with coughing passengers clinging to its ribs. Another wave comes. Fire this time. A shuttle in emergency descent scythes across the sky, engines stuttering. His axe rolls in his hand. Its ice melts to fog, and when he hurls the blade again, it splits the shuttle's tailfire, leeches momentum, and buys the pilot 6 honest seconds. The shuttle limps to a hard landing on the transit causeway. The causeway groans, cracks, but holds. The pilot kisses his cogitator idol with grease-black hands. In the prefecture, the governor drops the hand from the rail. "By the throne," she whispers, unable to stop herself. The Inquisitor says nothing. He breathes out. The air around him frosts and wreathes his words like incense. "He's not ours," he says quietly, "but he fights on our side. Then he is ours, until we find a reason to return him," the governor says, already turning. "Patch me to the causeway command. I want emergency lanes cleared and the Pilgrim Day line reversed. Get medici augers to the eastern embankment. Move!" The first enemy ship slams into real space with all the grace of a murder. Its hull is iron bones and char. The sigils burned into its flanks swear fealty to things older than language. It coughs a swarm of dropships in a gray rain. The sky tears glow black. Vox channels fill with laughter. The garrison of Cadence Ultima, Hive Guard, Hab Militia, a token battalion of the Astra Militarum, forms lines along the river approaches and prays with their fingers where they can't with their mouths. The stranger looks up. He knows war when he sees it. He has carried war in his mouth for a long time. He steps onto the causeway. "Axes are forbidden in the prefecture," a steel-voiced servitor announces by reflex in 3 languages. He walks through the warning like it is smoke. A colonel in flak coat and medals moves to block him and finds himself looking into eyes that can lift mountains. The colonel's instincts, beaten careful by 20 campaigns, do not explain these eyes. He steps aside. The first wave comes screaming down the air, warp-sick cultists with knives made of prayer, frothing berserkers in horned plate, and things with too many mouths where one should be. They land in hammerfalls of rusted iron. The stranger, Kratos, meets them on the causeway that spans the river like a blade. He is patient for a man who is a weapon. He waits until the first berserker closes, until the chain axe is almost on him, then twists and the axe winds past. He plants his own blade in the berserker's armpit, takes the arm, then the head. He uses bodies to break lines, pushes them into their brothers, lets their momentum work for him. He fights with math. He lets the blades of chaos unfurl when he needs reach. The chains bite, wrap, pull. He uses them to disarm, to yank a gunner off a burned-out turret, to swing around a shattered statue base and land behind a line of howling men who are more ritual than soldier. When he rips the blades back to his hands, the glow fades to embers, as if something inside the iron is holding its breath. He does not roar. He breathes. On the opposite bank, a squad of guardsmen is pinned behind a plinth. A heavy stubber is chewing the plinth thinner by the second. Kratos tosses the axe without looking. It arcs, takes the stubber and the 3 men behind it, and locks them all into a crystal of ice that squeals as it swells. He catches the axe in the return and uses the handle to collapse a cultist's nose into his brain. He sees the way the enemy is thinking. He can tell, by the way their pincer breaks on the river, that something smarter is just offshore. A vox crackles near his head. He looks at it like it spoke his childhood name. "Unknown asset," a woman's voice says through static, respectful by force of habit. "If you can hear me, this is Governor Maria Ann of Cadence Ultima. You just saved 10,000 lives and bought my city 5 minutes. Keep buying." He rolls his shoulder, blood and rain mixing on the pale skin. "I am," he answers, his voice low and rough with old smoke. "Kratos." "Then, Kratos," the voice says, "hold the river." He holds it. The first waves break and are reclaimed by the canal. The causeway becomes a charnel library, careful stacks of dead, carved methodically of threat. The guardsmen rally where he stands, because it is easier to be brave near the eye of the storm. Medici teams sprint. Servo skulls record. On the balcony of the prefecture, the governor lowers her chin and allows a flicker of relief to touch her mouth. The Inquisitor beside her does not move. He has been watching the other signatures on Auspex. He knows this was a probe. The coordinated translation that birthed those ships had a director. He lifts a hand. "Governor." She turns, annoyed at being called back from hope so quickly. He inclines his head toward the sky. "The true threat approaches," he says, and the words turn the air colder. "And it will not care for the virtue of our unknown ally. It will care for the flaw that all heroes share." He does not name the flaw. He does not need to. The second wave announces itself with silence. Vox lines die. Auspex washes blank, then fill with impossible geometries. The Mechanicus High Priest's voice becomes a howl of data pain as symbols that are not symbols crawl into the cathedral's logic engine and begin to breed. The sky cuts again. A ship arrives that is less a vessel than a curse. It wears chains like jewelry and drags a cloud of dark angels behind it. Its prow is a bronze ram in the shape of a screaming face. In its shadow descend elite shapes. Black armor trimmed in old gold, helms like skulls, eyes as red as coins in a sacrificial bowl. Black Legion. Their heraldry is incorrect for a casual raid. This is a statement. Kratos feels the change in the air before he sees them. The wind tastes of copper and salt. His scars itch. The ghost of a girl's laugh skates over his ear and is gone. He lifts the axe. It drips cold. The first of the champions lands in a needle that cracks Ferrocrete. He rises, a mountain of ancient plate decorated in conquests. His right gauntlet ends in a claw like a hunting cat's. His left hand holds a blade that is not metal, so much as a wound pulled taut into a sword shape. It weeps light backward into itself. Runes crawl. Something old gnaws from the other side of the steel. The thing in the blade sees Kratos and smiles without a mouth. The champion's vox grill clicks. His voice is a furnace. "I am Karzan of the Ashen Gate. Yours is a famous rage, little war. Bring it. My blade is thirsty." Kratos breathes once and answers without irony. Thirst is easy to slake. They move quickly for big men. Karzan strikes first. The warp sword bites the air and leaves it sick. Kratos goes under the cut and inside the guard, drives an elbow hard into a rib plate. Hard enough to dent, not enough to break. Karzan laughs. He moves like a cathedral at speed. He meets Kratos' axe with the warp sword, and for the first time since the river, the axe complains. Frost beads on the edge and runs backward like sweat in winter. Karzan's claw snaps. Kratos catches it in his left hand and turns. The motion is simple, a wrestler's footwork, but it carries titanic force. He throws Karzan hard into a fallen statue of a saint. Stone explodes. Devotional dust floats. Karzan comes up swinging. The warp sword grazes Kratos' ribs. It is a shallow cut by the math of warriors, but the pain rides all the way in. It isn't pain as he knows it. It is a song he learned long ago, the one written in his blood when gods branded him. The blade puts its tongue in that old scar and speaks. He stumbles one step. That is all the opening a champion needs. Karzan rips up with the claw, carving a groove over Kratos' collarbone, then feints low and slashes at the axe shaft. The Leviathan holds. The song in the sword grows louder. Kratos' chains rise like snakes when he calls them. The blades wrap Karzan's right arm. He jerks hard, dislocates a shoulder, then hammers the champion's helmet with the butt of the axe until the grill deforms. Karzan headbutts back. Skulls ring. A guard sergeant watching from behind a burned-out carrier later tells the Medicae that it was like seeing two continents collide. The fight is not pretty. It is a cruel arithmetic. Kratos bleeds. Karzan bleeds black and laughs. Kratos avoids the sword because he has learned, in the space of one breath and one shallow cut, what it is. A wound into a place that despises him for being human. Each touch will cost him something he cannot spare. They hit each other until the causeway cracks deeper. Karzan overcommits. Kratos drops his center of gravity and makes a decision. He lets the blades wriggle up Karzan's torso like starving vines, sink into plate joints, and pull. Flesh smokes. The chains burn brighter. A smell like old sacrifice rolls across the river. Kratos pulls harder and tears half of Karzan's cuirass away. Then, with a short, pained sound, he lets go. Letting go costs him. Leaving the blades in that grip would be easy. He has done that before. Wrapping, burning, taking. He remembers it well. The blades remember it better. They want to keep singing. He catches the axe two-handed and buries it in Karzan's knee joint, then the other. Karzan collapses, still laughing. He swings the warp sword in a flat, angry arc and scores Kratos' thigh. The cut feels like a memory. Athena's hand on his shoulder, his son saying, "Father," the quiet of a cold forest, and the sword drinks that warmth with greedy little gulps. Kratos drives the axe through Karzan's collar ring and into the throat beneath. The laughter stops. The warp sword falls. The thing inside it hisses. He stands panting. The wound in his ribs is shallow. The wound in his thigh is not. The wound under his skin is something else. He finds himself looking at his hands, as if counting scars he thought were gone. On the balcony, the Inquisitor finally speaks. "Warp-anchored weaponry," he says. "He is vulnerable to metaphysical compromise. I expected as much. Most men are vulnerable to bullets. Heroes are vulnerable to ideas." The governor does not answer. She is watching Kratos stagger exactly once, as if he allowed his body the courtesy of acknowledging the pain, then straighten out of habit. He does not look at the cheering guardsmen. He turns his head, listening again to something that is not here. "Call a council," she says. "If he can be hurt like that, we need him, and we need to not need him." When the first wave has been beaten back, and the second has recoiled like something stung, the War Council gathers in a sanctified chamber below the prefecture. Cogitators tick. Hollow saints flicker on their pedestals. A cracked mosaic of the Emperor solemnly endures a rising damp. Kratos stands at the edge of the table like a pillar that wandered in and forgot why. He has let the medici spray a sealant on his thigh wound. It stings like discipline. He does not touch it. He does not sit. "Unknown asset," the governor begins, then stops, catches herself, and nods at him. "Kratos, my city is alive because of you." "Alive is only a word," says the Inquisitor. His voice is not hostile. It is a knife set carefully beside someone else's bread. Lives were purchased. They will need to be repurchased tomorrow. "Who are you who spends on our account?" Kratos' eyes flick once to the black-rosetted man. "I am Kratos," he says, "of Sparta." The word sits strangely in this room among the liturgies of a different age. It smells of olive smoke and sea salt and a sun's hand in winter. The Inquisitor's head tilts, like a raptor considering 3 mice and choosing the sickest. "You are not of the Imperium," he says. "I am not of your gods," Kratos answers, "nor their war. But I have seen gods. I have killed them." He says it simply, without pride or apology. "I have a boy. I will not have the world he might find be worse because I stayed still when I could walk." The governor's mouth smiles because something in that flattens the distance between them. "That will suffice for an answer. We owe you 3 favors already," she says. "I would like to owe you 4. The Inquisitor's knuckles go white on the edge of the table. He says nothing. He looks at Kratos like a mathematician looks at a variable. They hash a plan. A dozen regiments who are really 3 will swell into the 4 that is necessary. Forge priests will strip-purify a stockpile of melted charges and weld them to pilgrim locomotives. The causeways will be mined with clever cruelty. The Navy in high orbit, 2 battered system monitors and a proud light cruiser named Pure Edict will adjust their fire plan to herd the enemy's next drop into 3 kill lanes. Kratos listens without interruption and adds nothing until someone proposes pulling the lower hive's fire brakes and turning 1,000,000 lives into a moat. He says, "No." It is not loud. It is not angry. It is a verdict delivered by a judge who does not believe in court. "Explain," says the Inquisitor. "You fight a fire," Kratos says. He looks around the room as if disappointed to have to. "You do not make more." "We have protocol," the Inquisitor murmurs. "We have seen the arithmetics of plague cities, demon incursions, tyrannid blooms. Mercy has costs we cannot afford." "Mercy is not warmth," Kratos says, mistaking neither the word nor the man. "Mercy is not letting your house catch because the forest burns. Your protocols are a dog that bites its master during thunder. You would teach us to wage our wars." There is no anger in the Inquisitor's voice. There is something worse. Interest. "On the strength of what authority?" "On the strength," Kratos says, and the neck cords stand like rope, "of having done what I have done, of having killed what I have killed, of knowing what it cost me, and knowing I would pay again, and still telling myself, there is a debt I will not pass to my son. Do what you must, but do not do what you can simply because you can." The table goes quiet. The governor leans on her fist, eyes narrowed, a general measuring a blade she might use. The colonels shift. The Mechanicus priest's speaker box purrs out a curtained litany of diagnostic doubt. The Inquisitor finally nods. "We will not firebreak the lower hive," he says. "For now." An alarm cuts off the debate. The chamber's Vox Saints glitch, then die. The hololith stutters and fills with symbols that are wrong. The Mechanicus priest makes a sound like a man swallowing pain. "Intrusion," he forces out. "At sanctum depth. Dream space vector. Psychana wards. Thinning. Something reaching through." The air tastes of pennies and old rain. The lights do not flicker. They dim, and the dimness feels like the room is holding its breath. Kratos knows that taste. He turns, reflex bringing the axe half up. There is nothing to hit. The Inquisitor's hand goes to the rosarius at his throat. The governor's knuckles go white again. A voice speaks from nowhere and everywhere. It speaks with 3 tongues at once. One, the voice of his wife asking him to come to bed. One, the voice of his father, telling him he is useless. One, the whisper of the ocean at the edge of a childhood he doesn't remember. "Kratos," it says, kind as winter, "do not tire yourself. There are easier wars." He shuts his eyes against it, because eyes are doors. It slides under the door. It shows him a city he has never seen, burning. It shows him a boy he knows better than he knows his own pulse, older and wearing armor the color of regret, with a yellow eye and a grin that is not his son's. It shows him his hands opening and the blades climbing, their heat feeding on the wind, and the wind feeding on the heat until everything within reach is cinder. "You are what you are," the voice says. "Let go. We will use you and love you for it. We are kinder kings than the dead gods of your frost-bitten past. We are honest. We do not make you swear words you cannot keep. We let you indulge." He fights it with the only weapon that works on such things. He names the room in his head. He speaks the names of the things in that room. Axe, chains, scar, boy. He cuts the voice on those names every time it tries to speak. It smiles anyway. He can feel a smile as pressure. "You cut gods," it says. "Did you think you did it for anyone but yourself?" Here there are gods of honest appetite. How tired you must be of restraint. The Inquisitor's voice threads in, tight as a wire. Sikana! He snaps into his vox, voice cracked with genuine urgency. Choir to sanctum, now! Something soft and bright gathers under the floor. Kratos opens his eyes because the room is different. The air tastes like gold leaf. Footsteps drum above, quick, disciplined, armored little storms. The door opens, and a line of women in white and red sweep in like a curtain of fire. They are armored from throat to knee, helms like candle flames. A robed man stands at their center and raises a staff that hums with a grief older than the city. The sisters sing. It is not a word song. It is an architecture. They build a room inside the room out of sound. They lay floors with their lungs and windows with their teeth. It presses gently on the skin. It does not cut. It says, here we are. Here is the place where your mind is allowed to stand. The thing in the corner of the room that is not a corner hisses and retreats like fog from a brazier. It does not leave. It folds itself around the edges of sight and watches while the sisters keep the walls stiff with their throats. Kratos feels it go. He realizes, without surprise, that he is shaking. It is a small tremor, like a fever that is almost a memory. He closes his hand on the axe and feels the weight reassure him of what is simple. The warp sword's touch still aches like a remembered song. The choir quiets. The robed man lowers the staff. The room exhales. The Inquisitor's gaze finds Kratos immediately. You see why we would fire break the world, he says without triumph. Kratos looks at the sisters, who look back without flinching. I see why you sing, he says. The sacred intercession buys them hours. Hours are a currency more honest than hope. The enemy does not press while its whisper is repulsed. The governor evacuates 6 Hab sectors with the precision of a surgeon cutting around a nerve. The Forge priests lay their melta charges in institutional profusion. The Navy sets their kill lanes. Kratos sits alone on a stair that goes nowhere inside the prefecture and thinks about the cut in his thigh and the way the warp sword's song tried to nest in his blood. He thinks about a boy and about a promise he made in a different forest on a different planet under a different sky, that he would be better than he had been. The Inquisitor finds him there. He sits without asking permission, because men with certain jobs do not ask for chairs. He does not speak for a long time. Kratos appreciates that. You carry an ethic like a standard, the Inquisitor says at last. It drags in the mud and gathers stains, and still you carry it because it is yours. I admire that even as I fear it. Kratos does not look at him. You fear everything, he says. It is my job, the Inquisitor replies. You gave orders in my city earlier. You said no to the lower hive. You bore it well. For a while. I will bear it for longer, Kratos says. You will not get to choose the length. That is the lesson of the Imperium. That is the lesson your son would need to learn here. The Inquisitor folds his hands. His gloves creak. Nevertheless, you are to come to Terra. The Regent will want to see you. Your Emperor. Our Emperor, the Inquisitor corrects without heat. Whether you own him or not will be a matter for judgment. The choir will keep you clean enough to travel. The Custodian Guard will make sure you arrive. Kratos stands. The stare is shorter when he does. Then we go. The voyage burns like a straight line carved through a nightmare. A light cruiser, the Pure Edict, hosts them. It is a proud machine with a wounded heart. Its corridors are hung with banners older than the current governor's family. Its crew prays before every burn, and sometimes after. The choir is housed in a sanctum whose walls are written on by 1,000 muttered psalms. Kratos visits the medica deck once and lets an old sister's hands clean the wound until it stops singing. He lets her scold him, as if he were a boy who forgot his boots. He spars in the launch bay with a custodian, because the golden giant asked him once, in a voice like a temple bell. The custodian moves the way a man moves who knows his life is a key. Kratos drives him back with an axe that hates to be matched. They do not hurt each other to the bone. It is not the day for that. They nod afterward like men standing at a grave where they've both buried something with a name. The chaplain aboard the Edict, a bookish man with a steel jaw and a voice like good oak, walks with Kratos. He asks questions the way some men throw knives to see what sticks. "Your gods died," he says without malice. "You killed them. What is left in their absence?" "Space," Kratos says. "And what lives there now?" "A boy," Kratos says, because he cannot say. "My notion of what a man should be, shaped by someone who thinks I am one." The chaplain nods, as if he has prodded a giant, and it did not step on him. In the Imperium, we do not have the luxury of spaces. We fill them with duty, because if we don't, something else will sit there and sing. Forgive me, stranger, but your ethic is beautiful, and also a risk. I am familiar with risk, Kratos says. I am less familiar with beauty. They are intercepted in transit at the edge of an Ort that was fed to a gang of dead moons 10 millennia ago. The Edict's Geller field sings false for 2 seconds. It is enough. Something steps lightly aboard with the caress of a librarian taking a book down from a high shelf. Kratos is in the bay, coiling his chains as one coils a habit. He hears the silence first, then sees it unspool. A man who is himself, if himself had never stopped killing. The new arrival is tall in a way that mocks the sun. His skin is ash and shadow, his red tattoos black as grief, his eyes 2 coins tossed into a bottomless well. The blades of chaos are wrapped around his fists like pet snakes that grew into myths. His smile is a wound. "Brother," the mirror says, with exactly the voice that memory uses to hurt. "How many gods would you like to kill today? I brought extras." Kratos keeps his face still because he has learned that faces are weapons other people use. "You are not my kin," he says. "I am your shape in honest light," the mirror replies, strolling down off a mech crawler's chain gratings as if it were a garden step. Around him, the air mists. In that mist, cities burn and men laugh and boys put on helmets and forget their names under their titles. I am the part of you that understands what this Imperium does to men like us. It says serve. It says sanctify. It says we are useful because of what we can do, and it punishes us for doing it. Come with me. We will be kings. We will be clean. We will not have to make our children watch us decline for the sake of a banner that would use them as firebreak. He is good. He is a careful liar. He hits the words that hurt. He makes the wound sing. Kratos lets the pain be a place he stands instead of something that pushes him. He shakes his head once. "No." "Why?" the mirror asks gently. "Because of a promise you made in a wood to a boy with his mother's eyes? Promises are word chains. You know how chains cut." "I do," Kratos says. "I have learned to hold them anyway." They meet in the middle of the bay. The mirror is fast in the way that rage is fast when nothing stands in its way. Kratos is slower, in the way that men who count breaths are slower. He catches chain on chain. The mirror presses. The blades smoke like altars. The custodian and the chaplain do not pull their bolters because this is not a bolt gun sort of fight. The mirror is a geometry of death that refutes reason. He is not bound by cost. He is what you get when you carve out doubt with a hot knife and throw it away. He cuts. He smiles. He urges. "See, you are better." Kratos weathers it like a mountain in a long storm. He is not better. He is only still there. He trades blood for a step, pain for a breath, balance for a throw. The chains buzz. The taste of metal fills his mouth. It is the edict that saves them, in a way. The ship shudders. The choir howls. The Astronomicon, the Emperor's light, flashes bright through the warp's oily dark for a heartbeat. And in that heartbeat, Kratos sees the mirror for what it is. A puppet that has cut its strings, but still dances to the memory of them. He sees the hole the puppet's heart leaves on the deck plating. He puts his axe down that hole on the next pass and pins the mirror's foot to the world. "You chose," the mirror says, through elegantly clenched teeth, still smiling, even as his ankle cracks like a downed mast. Kratos leans. He is very tired. "I did." The mirror laughs and lets himself fall backward, sickles of chains singing. He spills through the deck like water down a drain, into the dark between beats. A smell of hot iron and rain is all he leaves behind. "Stay with me," the chaplain says urgently, laying a hand on Kratos' shoulder that is firm enough to be permission and soft enough to be a friend. "We are almost to the throne." Terra arrives like a hymn carved into stone. The system is a knife-lined throat, and they are a small, honest pill sliding down it. The edict announces itself with the confidence of the saved. The system replies with the suspicion of the damned. The orbits are a glitter of weaponry. The planet is a wall of cities climbing a mountain of skulls. The sky is full of prayers that sound like traffic. They pass under void-born cathedrals the length of continents. They sink through a crown of spires. They land in a bay the size of an ocean, and its gates close behind them like a god's tired eyes. Custodians meet them in lines that are more ceremony than security, and exactly as much security as ceremony. Gnolls walk at their edges, the air around them oddly quiet, as if they were blocks of silence dragged across a choir. Kratos feels his skin crawl near them. The warp cuts in his memory lie down like dogs before a storm. They take him through a palace that is a planet, and a planet that is a palace. He walks through galleries of dead heroes, and rooms where the air is older than most star systems. He climbs stairs that are penitences, and passes through gates that weigh souls. He does not lower his head. He does not raise it either. He carries it like a man crossing a mountain stream on a log, thinking only about the foot that is not yet wet. The throne room is a sun built into a man, and a man built into a machine, and a machine built into a myth. Kratos stands below it like a spar in a gale. The custodian beside him kneels and does not look up. The Inquisitor steps forward and speaks into a wind made of human will. "My lord," he says, and the words are very small. "I bring a weapon. It is sharp, and not ours. It is clean, and it has a bite of other wars on it. It resists the protocols of convenience. It resists corruption for a price we can afford some of. It bleeds when struck with warp-sick iron. It sings when stirred. It saved a city. It endangered an ethic. It refused my firebreak." Silence descends, as if the throne has leaned in. The light that is not light lifts. It falls. He knows it is looking at him because he feels seen in places he did not know could be looked at. The skull of the Emperor is a thing mounted to a different time. The hands of the Emperor are custodians who stand with their blades and let the light stand for them. The mind of the Emperor, whatever it is, speaks. It does not speak in words. It puts 3 roads under his feet. The first is a path that runs backward. It runs into a wood he knows. The air is cold and fair, and full of a boy's mistakes. It shines here and there with warm lamps, and that warmth smells like bread. To walk this path is to leave the city. to tuck back into a narrative he already knows. It would take him home. It would take the memory of this war and this world out of him, slowly, kindly, like a splinter eased from a thumb. He would be allowed to keep the lesson without the name, or he would lose both, and in exchange, his boy would get a father who is less heavy. The second path is wild. It runs between worlds. It asks him to be himself in a place that does not want men to be themselves. It offers him no banner but his own. It is free agency, and it promises a steep ruin made of small freedoms. The Imperium would use him sometimes, but it would despise him all of the time. He would do good, and his good would be salt in someone's bread and somebody else's wound. He would pull children from fires and start other fires by not obeying. He would be loved and hated. He would become a story that complicates other stories, and the Inquisition would stalk him like a hunter who respects the prey. He would sleep in ditches some nights, and some nights he would dream of snow. The third path is a road with bolts along it. It gleams. It is stamped with the two-headed eagle and something else that was his before they painted it on. It is a sanction. It is an oath. It says, "You will carry a sigil under our sigil. You will walk where we point. You will crush things we do not have time to name. We will sing around you to keep the dreams off your eyes. We will tell you to burn what you want to spare. You will not always like us. You will change us a little. We will change you more." All three paths are honest. All three demand blood. The Emperor's light does not tell him which to choose. It offers him the respect of a burden. Kratos closes his eyes. He thinks about the river on Cadence Ultima. He thinks about the Inquisitor's hand tightening on a table. He thinks about a chaplain's careful questions, a custodian's honest strike, a governor who prays with her hands because her mouth has no time. He thinks about boys who will live because he stood on a causeway and counted breaths. He thinks about a boy he likes, who calls him father. He opens his eyes and looks up. "I will walk your road," he says. "But I will not burn what is not mine to burn. If you want me to kill a city, find a different hand." A pulse runs through the throne. Inquisitors breathe out like pressed bellows. The custodians, who never show, smile on the inside. The Emperor's not voice touches the room like the edge of a page turning. It feels a little like pity, and a little like pride, and a lot like relief. A choir arrives that does not wear armor. They wear light. They sing careful songs, and their careful songs weld imagery to skin. They make a mark where a mark was already waiting. A two-headed eagle unfurls along Kratos' shoulder, black on white on red. It wraps one claw around the rune that means him. The axe and the blades are etched in miniature within the eagle's wings, not as decorations, but as war marks, warnings to strangers and to himself. A custodian steps forward with a case. He opens it like a reliquary. Inside lies a device made of old gold and honest iron. It is a band that fits around a forearm. It hums softly, like a hive of bees that has found a queen. "This will drink the worst of the warp song when it comes close," he says, as if offering an umbrella to a man who has just been baptized. "It will cost you strength when it cuts in. It will not save you from everything. It will save soldiers near you from some things." Kratos slides the band up his scarred arm. It locks with a click that feels like a leash and a promise. The Inquisitor watches the whole ritual with a face that could be carved onto a saint of reservations. When it is done, he nods once. "Boundaries clause," he says dryly, unexpected from a man who used to be a god. "I was never good at being told," Kratos says. "Learn," the Inquisitor says. "It is not cruel. It is the sound a teacher makes in a room where he has seen boys die for pride. And I will learn where to point you and where to let you stand, and say no on my behalf. The war does not end because a man chooses a road. The war does not notice, except where he steps. That is enough. Back on Cadence Ultima, his sigil burns like a small constellation under the city's shield. It tastes like iron and old thunder. He returns to the river with a choir behind him. The Black Legion returns with better tools. Their warp swords multiply. They bring a heretic whose hands are stained in other realities, and an engine that weeps blood and prophecy. Kratos meets them at the causeway, and this time, when the sword bites, the band on his arm drinks. It makes him weak for half a breath. He spends that weakness by not pressing. He refuses a kill his body wants and takes a smaller victory that holds a line. The governor watches him fight differently and understands that judgment has its own aura. She sends a message to the throne. The weapon is sharp and knows the price of being so. The throne does not reply because it never does, but a different ship appears in high orbit and a different kind of aid descends, quiet, efficient, wrapped in doctrine like a knife in cloth. The mirror returns exactly once. He grins from a rooftop and throws Kratos his own chain, like a joke with a hook in it. Kratos does not laugh. He does not bite. The mirror pouts and kills a Black Legion champion just to make a point, then fades into the rain. He is what happens when a man like Kratos is devoured by the logic of a simpler crown. He is not interesting anymore. He will be again when the boy he worships grows up in some other storm. The named antagonist who follows Karzan is worse in a quieter way. She is a sorcerer whose voice is a tide. Her blade is not warp-anchored. Her mind is. She hurts Kratos not by cutting him, but by making him remember how he used to solve problems when his hands were not enough. She shows him a city he could break into an obedient rebel with 3 simple acts. He shakes after that fight because his body remembers that there is a faster way. The band on his arm hums angry as a hive. He sits on a stair again and breathes until the shaking is a companion, not a master. When the campaign on Cadence Ultima is stabilized, when the Black Legion writes a promise on the sky and departs with a crackle of spite, when the river runs brown and then clear and then brown again with different kinds of work, Kratos walks the lower hive with the governor at his side. They have both been given medals. Neither wears them. They look at the place he would not let burn, and the governor says, without looking at him, "You were right. The numbers on paper were wrong. The numbers on faces are better." He grunts. That is all. The Inquisitor watches them from a balcony and thinks about what it means to have an asset who is also a man. He files a report. He leaves out everything that would make his masters call him compromised, and includes every detail that would get him killed if it goes wrong. He is very good at his job. Kratos becomes a tool with a name. He is dispatched with choir and custodian, and a small company of guardsmen who are careful around him the way sensible farmers are careful around the bull that broke 3 fences and saved the village from wolves. He goes to worlds whose names taste like rust and spice and fire. He pulls children out of the mouths of things, and sometimes puts men into those mouths because there is no other way. He refuses 2 orders and obeys one he hates, and learns to live with all 3. The sigil on his shoulder becomes a story. It is a 2-headed eagle holding an axe and a chain. In some versions, the chain holds his hand. In some, it is a leash on a wolf with a boy's eyes. In the underhives of Cadence Ultima, children draw it on walls next to prayers. In the spires of Terra, courtiers whisper it into goblets and pretend they are not afraid of what it means, that the Imperium has found a hope that is not pure and will use it anyway. The villains vow counters, as villains do. A word-bearer writes a sermon in a dead language about how the gods will eat the man who ate gods. A heretic of Mars designs a machine to drink the cold from his axe. A demon digs a hole in a star and waits for the day the boy becomes the man, and the man becomes the corpse, and the corpse becomes a story it can wear. On a small world with blue wheat, under a sky that has never known the ashfall of hive spires, Kratos stands with a chaplain and watches the sun go down. The chaplain says, without looking at him, "Do you miss the wood?" "Every day," Kratos says. "Missing is a cost I like to pay. It means there is something I did not burn." The chaplain smiles. "You are very good at not burning things for a man who is fire." Kratos grunts. The band on his arm is warm in the evening. He thinks about a boy who laughs, and a forest that is quiet, and a river on a hive world that still runs, and an emperor who gave 3 roads and let him choose. He thinks about how long he will walk. He lifts the axe and checks its edge. He wraps the chain carefully. He breathes. He is a man who killed gods, who now serves one who will not thank him and will not curse him either. He is a sanction. He is a story. He is a warning. He is a father who keeps his promise in the only way this empire allows, by counting breaths while holding a line, and by saying no in front of a throne and walking out with its blessing anyway. In the void above, a bright token burns, his sigil paired with the aquila on a field of red and white. The last image is simple: a pale hand closing on a haft, chains lying slack, an eagle with 2 heads looking 2 ways and seeing both, and somewhere, very far away, a boy with a different sky above him, dreaming of snow and listening to a song that is not a sword's. He will wake one day and choose his own road. For now, the father walks. The galaxy makes room for that. And the war, which is the galaxy's heartbeat, misses a beat and notices briefly that men who choose can scare it. Then it beats again, and he moves. The galaxy tries to roll back to its brutal mean. It fails in small, irritating ways. On Lathes Remis, a ring world of manufactoria that tastes of iron filings and incense, a magos with a face of polished brass opens a data casket stamped with the sigil of the Inquisition. He does not hurry. Haste is heresy, unless it is liturgically justified. Inside, cushioned in flocked felt like a reliquary tooth, sits a shard of ice that does not melt. He holds a sensor close. The sensor whines in a register most men cannot hear. "Leviathan derivative," he murmurs. "Pattern unknown. Cold source. Non-thermal. Conceptual. Induction at 9.72. Tertiary effect on proximate etheric blight vectors. Attenuation." He looks up at his apprentices, who are a forest of augmetics and hope. "Begin a prayer of duplication. We will learn how to lie like this metal lies, to be cold where heat would be expected." He turns the shard with tweezers. In the reflection, he glimpses a pale face with a red band over one eye. It is there and gone in the cold. He says nothing about it. He adds a clause to the prayer: humility. On a black ship that moves without wake through night, a woman in white armor kneels before an altar shaped like a book. The sisters of the choir are quiet when they are not singing, but it is not silence. It is attention. The canoness reads a report too carefully written not to contain necessary sins. She closes her eyes and sees a man on a causeway refusing to kick a city into a furnace. She sees him in gold light, saying no to a throne. She rises and finds her palatine waiting. "We will sing for him again," she says, "and we will sing at him when we must." Is he a saint? He is a warning, the canoness says. Warnings are harder to canonize. We will try. In a craft shaped like a flint knife, far from the lanes men use, a farseer pulls a skein of possibility across a table made of bone. Her eyes are empty pools because they are full of futures. She follows a thread that smells of snow and iron. It snags on a knot in the web, something like a heart that decided to be a wall instead. She touches it and feels heat as old as betrayal. A god's scream unsuccessfully swallowed. Kaela Mensha Kain, she whispers, reverence and hate braided. A shard that refused? No. A mortal who learned a shard song and did not let it write him. Interesting. She turns her bare head toward the warrior standing 2 paces behind. We will not warn the Monarchy, she says. We will not help the great enemy either. We will watch. If this man becomes a bridge, we will decide what crosses. On a dead moon, with a habit of collecting the dying, a war boss hears a story through 3 translators and 4 guns about a pale Umi who doesn't shout when he crumps. The war boss grins and slaps a knob hard enough to remind him that telling stories without fighting is a kind of theft. Get me to Detive World, he says. If he's not there no more, we'll find where he went. I want to see if he bleeds quiet. The galaxy is a chorus. Not all parts harmonize. Enough of them rhyme to pass for music, if you are tired. Kratos learns the rhythm of dispatches. The Inquisitor's orders arrive as brief, careful paragraphs that assume resistance and compose themselves to survive it. The governor writes sometimes too. Her notes have the clipped cadence of a woman who learned to be kind quickly. The chaplain sends riddles that look like prayers until you turn them over and find a blade in the paper. He goes where the sigils tell him. He meets trouble where it lives. He pays attention. On Carthage Secundus, the red basilica spills over a mesa like a frozen bloodfall. It is a shrine world, which means its economy is piety, its exports are martyrdoms, and its imports are everything else. The basilica's gods are the emperor's faces, arranged into a mosaic so crowded with meaning that hunger slips through the grout. When the word-bearers come to write a different litany in bolter holes and screaming, the basilica answers with bells, and bells are not armor. Kratos lands in dust, the choir at his back, and a platoon of guardsmen at his flanks who wear the look men get when each of them is certain they are the one that will be killed and is working hard not to resent the others for failing to take that job. The enemy has tunneled under the outer ring of the shrine complex, sapping 3 sanctified bastions and replacing their foundations with spite. A Canonist commander meets them on a stair that shines from feet, not polish. She is steel with a seam of fire. We will hold the nave, she says, not as an invitation. You will plug the breach. Kratos looks where she points. The breach is a throat cut into the plateau where rock refuses to remember being rock. Heat crawls out of it like language trying to break skin. Do not let them into places with names, he says. The basilica, the canoness says, as if introducing him to her house and her mother and her god at once, has only places with names. He nods, because sometimes the obvious is the beginning of the work. He goes down with his platoon into the throat. Tunnels are honest. They tell you who dug them. These were made by hands that like to hurt stone. The walls are shaved to a glossy facet in places where demons licked them clean. The air is distilled sweat and rot. They find the first curse at a bend, a sigil drawn with a child's hand and a scholar's malice. It looks stupid until it is not. The band on his arm hums. The choir sings softly, a line of thread to hold men to themselves. Kratos takes a step toward the sigil to cut it when the air around it fattens with presence. The thing that wakes is small, in all the ways that make it fit in places you couldn't normally keep monsters. It is a pain you could tuck into a locket. It reaches for a guardsman's memory of his mother's kitchen and sets it on fire. Kratos moves before the fire catches something he cannot see. He throws the axe not at the sigil, but at the place on the wall where the tunnel shifts from sleepless to bored. The blade bites, frost blooms, and the little demon stiffens into glass and drops with a sound like a secret breaking. He learns the way the curses talk to each other. He learns where to cut the grammar. He learns which syllables the choir needs to sing under which blow. He bleeds once on his palm when a rune slaps his hand like a bad child and expects to be rewarded. He does not reward it. He does not correct it either. He kills it. They reach the central vault of the saps. The word-bearers are building a sermon that will preach itself when it detonates. The sermon stands on bronze pillars that are not structural. They are moral. Breaking them will make the explosion impure, which to word-bearers is a failure worse than losing. Kratos reads that with his nose. He does not speak the language of their madness, but madness has customs, and customs can be taken apart if you are careful and do not hate them more than you hate what they are for. Charges, he says. The platoon's sappers move like men who have wanted to be necessary for weeks and are relieved to be so. They place melt-a-lumps like candies in the mouths of small statues and whisper prayers that sound like work songs. The sergeant in charge is a woman with a scar on her chin that knits and unknits when she thinks. "On your count," she says. "Not yet," Kratos replies. He can feel the pressure on the back of his neck that says the enemy is almost ready to feed the sermon to the fuse. He walks a slow circle around the pillars, counting in his head in a language he learned from a witch in a wood who asked him to be a better man. He stops at a place where the floor is too clean. He hits it with the butt of his axe. The floor answers with a tone he recognizes. He hits it again, harder. On the third strike, the tile gives. Under the tile, a well opens, slick with oil, whispering. The well's whisper shapes itself into his name with someone else's mouth. He drops a melt-a-charge down and steps back. The blast claps. Heat licks up, and the whisper gurgles away like bathwater. "Now," he says. The sappers kiss their little saints and go. The sermon collapses into confused syllables under the controlled charges. The pillars bend like reeds. Above, the word-bearers roar because they can tell when a story they were writing stops meaning what they meant it to mean. They come for the vault, fast and heavy. Kratos meets them at the mouth with his axe and his band and his choir. The first word-bearer in is a giant with script carved into his tongue. He sings as he swings, the blade a cadence. Kratos interrupts the song by breaking the man's knee and then the rhythm. He uses that body to slow the next, and the next, until the tunnel chokes on the corpses it wanted to expel as victors. He keeps the fight narrow, unfair, deliberate. He pauses when the band hums too high and lets the choir sit a note in his bones. The fight takes long enough for the charges to finish their argument with the pillars and for nice load-bearing to become messy hazard. The tunnel shifts its shoulders. The roof gives a sigh like a saint forgiving a thief and comes down in great dusty sheets. The guardsmen haul out backward by the line, Kratos last, holding weight. When the last slab drops, the word-bearers above scream their sermon at a roof that no longer exists. The basilica shakes, but it does not burn. Bells keep ringing. Bells are what the world has instead of thanks when it is busy living. On the mesa, the Canaanese commander watches the dust rise from the saps and registers the absence of a blast. She nods once and scratches a mark on a slate that is her memory when she cannot afford to have one. She glances at the nave where her sisters are a wall made of flesh and armor and breath. She glances at the sky where enemy drop shuttles hang undecided in the shadow of a cruiser's new angle. She wonders if gratitude is a vice when it interrupts violence. She decides it is not. She keeps killing. After Carthage Secundus, there is Brecht Fourth, a winter world where the enemy is not chaos, but hunger shaped into policy. The governor there is a man who shaved his beard off to look young while signing old orders. He tells Kratos politely that the grain seizures will continue and the riots will be put down efficiently. "You asked for help," Kratos says. The governor smiles with good teeth. "I asked for legitimacy." The Inquisitor appears at Kratos' shoulder like a coin falling out of the dark. "He asked for permission to kill correctly," he says dry, which is worse than incompetence. The debate after is a slow knife. Mercy versus survival wears different faces when the enemy is hunger, and you command men with guns. Kratos does not argue the Imperium's syntheses. He argues a single line, that the riot line must bend at hospitals and food queues, that there are places in a city that wear neutrality in a way even war should respect. The governor listens because he must. The Inquisitor supports because it costs him nothing. The PDF commanders accept because a man who decapitated a chaos champion without shouting told them to, and the winter is long, and they would like to live through it. Not all victories thrum with glory. Some throb like bad teeth. The winter ends with fewer dead, and men who wanted a riot as an excuse to shoot are disappointed and alive. Kratos leaves with a taste of ash that is not a city, but the compromises you can smell in your beard. He eats stew in a common hall with the guardsmen. He does not smile. He warms his hands. The mirror writes itself back into the story where it is worst. It chooses a moon where the dead are left to freeze upright as waymarks for the living. It arranges a fight around a cairn made of names. It beckons with an open hand and a full mouth. "We could free 1,000 worlds," it says. "We could kill an emperor who is a chair. We could tell boys with eyes like yours that the only gods left are fathers who keep their promises and wars you choose." Kratos feels tired in the way that is not physical. He looks at the cairn. He puts his palm on it. The ice burns. He says softly, "I am keeping my promise." The mirror looks unimpressed. To whose morality? Theirs. That is the joke. The chain is gold now. "It is still a chain," Kratos says, and the honesty of that statement steadies him. "I will hold it while I must, and I will drop it when I can." The mirror shows him a world where he never drops it, where he becomes a golden dog. The mirror shows him a world where he drops it now, here, and the choir dies screaming, and the custodian in the first mission lies open like a book that never gets to be closed. The mirror shows him, pinched between two frames, that both are versions of hells that have good days. "You want an answer I do not have," Kratos says. "I want you to be honest," the mirror says with glee, because honesty is often a weapon. "And to be honest, here's a truth. You like this. Used well. Pointed where you can do good. The leash bothers you because you pretend you do not want one." Kratos nods. "Sometimes I like it. I learned to like being useful. That does not make the leash a god. It makes it a tool." "Tools become hands," the mirror says. "Hands become law." "Maybe," Kratos says, "not today." They fight, and it is brief and high and painful. The mirror takes a token, one of Kratos' chain hooks, torn free, thrown back to him like a present he will hate carrying. Kratos takes a toe. It is a ridiculous exchange, and it hurts. The mirror leaves laughing, and for once the laugh sounds tired. He is the part of a man who cannot stop. He is learning, painfully, to be bored. News of Kratos moves through the Astartes like a rumor you want to be false and useful at once. A chapter. Master with half his face replaced by a story he will not tell reads a dossier and grunts. "He is not ours," he tells his librarian, "so we should not use him until we do." The librarian raises an eyebrow that exists because 2 genocides ago a gene craftsman loved quirks. And if the enemy uses him, then we use him faster, the chapter master replies. And if he balks, we respect that until we cannot. A captain of the Death Watch draws a blue circle on a slate around a mission profile labeled Sanctioned Servitor K and adds 2 words: ask first. His kill team jeers him in a friendly way, which is to say, sincerely. He pretends to be annoyed. He will ask first. He will aim anyway. The Custodians keep their opinions where opinions belong, behind masks, in hands, under blades. One of them, the one who sparred, writes a report that is half poetry and half logistics. He notes that the man's footwork is wrong for the armor he wears and should be wrong everywhere, but is not. He notes the breath count. He notes the way the man says, no. He ends the report with 4 words: asset, ally, man, father. He intends that ordering to be a curse to his successors. He hopes it is a guide. Kratos' body keeps a ledger. His mind only scans. The band drains a little more each time it drinks warp song. It leaves a soft ache in the bones it touches, a friendlier pain than corruption, a cost he pays from a deeper purse. He finds a white hair in his beard and does not think about it. He loses it in a fight with a demon engine that wants to be a church if it can just eat enough hearts. He wrestles it until it breaks like a tool under too much torque, and after, when the medic tells him to sleep, he does as ordered. He dreams of trees. The Inquisitor comes to him with a request he shapes like an order. A world petitioned for exterminatus, he says, without throat-clearing prelude. It is a penitent world. They raised their banners and then found themselves unable to carry them. Chaos moves in sutures under the skin of their nobility. We can burn the planet and save the sector a war of centuries, or we can try something uglier. Try ugly, Kratos says. We strike the shipyards, the Inquisitor says. We collapse their orbital elevators. We starve the nobility of ships. We leave the lower continents out of the fire. It will cost more lives than our men. It will look merciful. It will be controversial. The High Lords will call it compromise. They will not be wrong. Do it, Kratos says. Your ethics do not need permission, Kratos says. The Inquisitor's smile is a fraction that could disappear in a blink and be a trick of light. No, he says, but they need allies. I will be the one you will blame when this angers the wrong men. Kratos does not thank him. He does not know how to thank an Inquisitor without lying. He nods, which is their language for gratitude. They go. The elevators fall like spears that remember being mountains. The shipyards burn like libraries by accident. The nobles scream in chorus. The lower continents suffer attrition that tastes like stale bread instead of demons. The debate on Terra stinks of compromise and victory. The Emperor's throne says nothing, as ever. The choir sings as they burn shuttles that might have carried plague. Kratos carries guilt like a standard again. He lays it down at night and picks it up in the morning. He does not always like the man who straps it on. He likes him enough to keep doing it. The governor writes him a letter he will never read, because letters are for the living, quiet. And he is not that. In it, she says, I used to think ethics were luxuries. You taught me they are tools if you sharpen them. Thank you for being harder than the men who would have used you. A sorcerer of the Black Legion builds a blade that is supposed to hum at the band's frequency and eat it. When he brings it to the field on a world where the ground refuses to remember having been soil, Kratos meets him with contempt that is a temperature. The blade hits the band, and the band's humming changes pitch. The sorcerer's teeth fall out of his mouth one by one. He dies quietly, more embarrassed than afraid. Kratos spares a thought for the teeth, which do not deserve this indignity. On a pilgrim road under a green sky like old copper, he meets a man who refuses to move aside. because his god told him the road is for the righteous alone. Kratos steps into the mud and lets the righteous man pass with his family. The man sneers at him, then blushes when his wife glares. Kratos does not mind the sneer. He minds the blush. He wonders if he will ever be as proud of stepping aside as he is of killing. He wonders if that matters. He starts to teach without admitting it. In a training bay, he shows a squad of guardsmen how to use a chain as a measure of distance, not just a weapon. In a chapel, he tells a young sister that singing is a blade that needs to be sheathed between cuts. In an inquisitorial briefing, he says, "No," and the novitiates watch how the Inquisitor answers, without fury, with argument, with a wince, and learn what resistance bought with blood looks like. He keeps walking. He keeps counting breaths. There is, at last, something like a return, but it is not the road the throne offered. It is a winter on a world with trees that pretend at his old forest and fail at it beautifully. He is deployed to rest between wars. He finds a place on a hill where the wind makes the grass argue with itself and does nothing about it. He sits and does not remember not to reach for the axe. He lets his hands be empty. The band hums in the key of quiet. The chaplain finds him there and sits without asking. He does not talk right away. He learned that from Kratos. When he speaks, his voice is a floor worth standing on. "You have changed us," he says. Kratos looks at the horizon. "I am not a banner," he says. "No," the chaplain replies. "Banners are simpler. You are a clause. You are a footnote that is longer than the text. That is always where the heart hides." Kratos grunts. He does not know what to do with praise that is a puzzle. "Have I bent the war?" "No," the chaplain says. "But I have watched 3 captains bend their protocols and live with the kinks. I have watched an Inquisitor risk something he values more than men. I have watched children draw your sigil beside their prayers and not in place of them. The war is a river. You threw a rock into it. The water goes around. But some fish live because there is a rock to hide behind. They sit. The sky is old copper. The wind teaches grass to say the same thing over and over and mean it. Messages come. They always do. One is from the Inquisitor. It is 3 words and a coordinate set. Kratos stands. The chaplain stands with him. 3 paths, the chaplain says. "You remember?" "I do," Kratos says. "And you chose the one with the most work." "It is the only one where I keep not burning," Kratos says. "I will walk it until I cannot. Then I will walk it slower." The ending, because endings are ceremonies and the Imperium loves those, is not a scene, but a sequence of faces lit by war and by something that is not war. An orc hears a rumor and grins. A Farseer touches a knot and does not cut it. A Canaaness pins a medal on a sister and tells her to sing quieter and harder. A Magos puts down his tweezers and prays to a god he cannot name that the shard of ice does not poison his curiosity. A governor sleeps for 4 hours and wakes with a gasp because she dreamed of cities falling into fire and a pale man holding a causeway with his breath. The villains vow counters in the language of their gods. A demon draws a circle in a star and names it Kratos and puts a piece on it, carved like a boy. A Black Legion warlord smelts a claw out of stories and swear words. The mirror stands on a roof and watches a sunrise he would have mocked before Dumnort and spits once and does not laugh. He will try again. He will always try again. He is hope's enemy, and he is stubborn. Stubbornness is a kinship they share. It makes their duels gentler and worse. Somewhere very far from any of this, a young man with a scar he did not choose and a laugh he did chooses covers his face against a snow flurry and grins. He does not know why his chest feels tight. He will. Not today. There will be a day when a choice wakes up and asks for breakfast. It will be a very hard morning. He will keep eating. On a wall in Cadence Ultima, where children draw their prayers, a new image appears. It is not the Aquila standing over an axe and a chain anymore. The eagles' heads are turned out, still, watching two ways at once, because vigilance is a candle that burns fingers. Below, the axe is planted in stone like a boundary stake. The chain is looped, not taut. On the stone, a sentence is scratched in a child's hand because no one taught an adult to write it first. Don't burn what isn't yours. People pass it on their way to work, and to worship, and to war. Some shake their heads at the insolence, some smile. Some touch it as they pass and add in smaller letters another clause. And when it is yours, think twice. There are not many banners like that in the Imperium. There are a few more every year now. They are small. They get painted over. They get painted again. They are not doctrine. They are a habit. Habits survive gods. The last image reframes the symbol because symbols rot when they do not. A pale hand, scarred and steady, plants an axe not in an enemy, but in the earth. Chains lie slack, not to trip, but to measure. The Aquila looms, not devouring, but sheltering something human without making it imperial. The light is not gold alone. It is the color of late afternoon on a world that remembers winter and expects spring with appropriate suspicion. The war beats. He moves. He counts. He chooses again and again until choosing is a road he has worn in with his feet. And the galaxy, which is cruel and clever, and occasionally sentimental when it thinks no one is watching, makes a little room for that, and pretends it did not on purpose.